Welcome back to another episode of American Homicide with Jake Ryder. My name is Jake Ryder, of course, and we are just going to get right into it. I started watching that Netflix documentary on the Night Stalker, otherwise known as Richard Ramirez, and I guess I just didn't understand how absolutely fucking crazy his crimes were. So I'm going to go over his crimes, and I'm also going to cover a crime that I interviewed somebody for on my other show, Cloud Surfing. I interviewed them in regards to the Delphi Homicides, which is an unsolved case, and it's so solvable. That's the thing with it. You've got video and audio of the dude who did it. Like, it's so solvable. And I think the more exposure that this double homicide gets, the more likely it's going to be, solved. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. Richard Ramirez was born in El Paso, Texas on February 29, 1960, the youngest of Julian and Mercedes Ramirez's 5 children. His father, Julian, a Mexican national and former Ciudad Juarez policeman who later became a laborer on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway, was prone to fits of anger that often resulted in physical abuse. As a 12-year-old, Richard, or Richie as he was known to the family, was strongly influenced by his older cousin Miguel, or Mike, Ramirez, who was a decorated Green Beret combat veteran who often boasted of his gruesome exploits and abuses during the Vietnam War. He shared Polaroid photos of his victims, including Vietnamese women who he had raped. Some of those photos, Mike posed with the severed heads of the women that he had just abused. Richard, who had begun smoking marijuana at the age of 10, bonded with Mike over joints and gory war stories. Mike taught his young cousin some of his father's military skills, such as taught his cousin some of his military skills, such as killing with stealth. Around this time, Ramirez began to seek escape from his father's violent temper, and he began sleeping in a local cemetery. Richard was present on May 4th, 1973, when his cousin Mike fatally shot his wife, Jessie, in the face with a .38 caliber revolver during a domestic argument. After the shooting, Richard became sullen and withdrawn from his family and peers. Later that year, Richard moved in with his older sister, Ruth, and her husband, Alberto, and became an obsessive peeping Tom who took Richie along on his nocturnal exploits. Ramirez also began using LSD and cultivated an interest in Satanism. Mike was not found guilty of Jesse's murder by reason of insanity and was released in 1977 after 4 years of incarceration at the Texas State Mental Hospital. His influence over Ramirez continued. See, the 70s and 80s should just not have existed. I swear there was just no rules. You could just do whatever the hell you wanted in that 20-year period. Shit was nuts. The adolescent Ramirez began to mold his... Let me back up. Sorry, I missed my place. The adolescent Ramirez began to meld his burgeoning sexual fantasies with violence, including forced bondage and rape. While still in school, he took a job at the local Holiday Inn, where he used his passkey to rob sleeping patrons. His employment ended abruptly after Ramirez attempted to rape a woman in her hotel room before her husband returned to find them. Although the husband beat Ramirez senselessly at the scene, criminal charges were dropped when the couple, who lived out of state, declined to return to testify against him. So apparently that just means that rape is fine if you just don't want to go back and see the dude in court. I don't see how that makes any sense, but okay. That's the thing, it's something you have the right to see who's going to testify against you or whatever, but it just seems weird in that case. Ramirez dropped out of the Jefferson High School in 9th grade. At the age of 22, he moved to California, where he settled permanently. On April 10th, 1984, Ramirez murdered 9-year-old Chinese-American Mei Lung, I can't pronounce that properly, in the basement of the hotel where he was living. In the Tenderloin district of San Francisco, he raped and beat the girl before stabbing her to death and hanging her body from a pipe. This, Ramirez's first known killing, was not identified as being connected to the subsequent crime subsequent crime spree until 2009, when Ramirez's DNA was matched to a sample obtained at the crime scene. In 2016, officials disclosed evidence of the second suspect, identified through DNA sample retrieved at the scene, who is believed to have been present at her murder. Authorities have not publicly identified the suspect, being described as a juvenile at the time, and have not brought charges due to a lack of evidence. On June 28, 1984, 79-year-old Jemmy Vincow was found brutally murdered in her apartment in Glassgill Park, Los Angeles. She had been stabbed repeatedly while asleep in her bed. Her throat was slashed so severely and so deeply that she was nearly decapitated. Ramirez's fingerprint was found on a mesh screen that he removed to gain access through an open window. On March 17, 1985, Ramirez attacked 22-year-old Maria Hernandez outside her home in Rosemead, California, shooting her in the face with a .22 caliber handgun after she pulled into her garage. She survived when the bullet ricocheted off the key that she held in her hands as she lifted her attempt to protect herself. Oh my God. Inside the house, her roommate, Dale Okazaki, age 34, heard the gunshot and ducked behind the counter when she saw Ramirez enter the kitchen. When she raised her head, he shot her once in the forehead, killing her. Within an hour of the Rosemead home invasion, Ramirez pulled 30-year-old Ceylan Veronica Yu out of her car in Monterey Park, shooting her twice with a .22 caliber handgun, and fled. She was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. 2 murders and an attempted third in a single day attracted extensive coverage from news media, who dubbed the attacker, described as curly-haired with bulging eyes and wide-spaced rotting teeth, the walk-in killer and the valley intruder. On March 27, 1985, Ramirez entered a home that he had burglarized a year earlier just outside of Whittier, California. Is that really the name, Whittier? Okay. At approximately 2 a.m., and killed the sleeping Vincent Charles Cesara, age 64, with a gunshot to his head with a .22 caliber handgun. Cesara's wife, Maxine Lavinia, age 44, was awakened by the gunshot, and Ramirez beat her and bound her hands while demanding to know where her valuables were. While he ransacked the room, Maxine escaped her bonds and retrieved a shotgun from under the bed, which was not loaded. The infuriated Ramirez shot 3 times with the .22 and then fetched a long carving knife from the kitchen. He mutilated her body by stabbing her several times and then gouged her eyes out and placed them in a jewelry box, which he left with. The autopsy determined that the mutilations were post-mortem. Vincent and Maxine's bodies were discovered by their son, Peter. Ramirez left footprints from a print of Avia sneakers in the flower beds, which the police photographed and cast. This was virtually the only evidence the police had at the time. Bullets at the scene were matched to those found at previous attacks, and the police determined that the serial killer was at large. On May 14, 1985, Ramirez returned to Monterey Park and entered the home of Bill Doy, age 66, with his disabled wife Lillian, age 56. Surprising Doy in his bedroom, Ramirez shot him in the face with his .22 semi-automatic pistol as Doy went for his own handgun. After beating mortally and wounding the man into unconsciousness, Ramirez entered Lillian's bedroom, bound her with thumb cuffs, and then raped her after he had ransacked the home for valuables. I don't know if you guys know what thumb cuffs are, but they're those fucking, it's like really jaded on the top, and then it's really sharp on the bottom. They clamp them together on your thumb, so if you try to pull off, it'll just cut your thumbs away. So that's pretty weird. It's weird to find that. I've never seen that except for in that documentary when they talked about it. Bill Doy died of his injuries while in the hospital. On the night of May 29th, 1985, Ramirez drove a stolen car to Monrovia and stopped at the house of Maybelle May Bell. Okay, her first name is Maybelle, and then her name is May, and then her last name is Bell. So okay. All right. Age 83, and her disabled sister Florence Nettie Lang, age 81. Finding a hammer in the kitchen, he bludgeoned and bound Lang in her bedroom, then bound and bludgeoned Bell before using an electrical cord to shock the woman. What the hell? After raping Lang, he used Belle's lipstick to draw satanic pentagram symbols on her thighs as well as on the walls of both bedrooms. The women were found 2 days later, alive but comatose. Belle later died of her injuries. The next day, Ramirez drove the same car to Burbank and snuck into the home of Carol Kyle at age 42. Not at age, she was age 42. At gunpoint, he bound Kyle and her 11-year-old son with handcuffs, then ransacked the house. He released Kyle to direct him where the family's valuables are. He then raped her repeatedly. Ramirez also repeatedly ordered her not to look at him, telling her at one point that he would cut her eyes out, which, if you remember, he's not afraid to do. He fled the scene after retrieving the child from the closet and binding the two together again with handcuffs. On the night of July 2nd, 1985, he drove a stolen car to Acadia and then randomly selected a house of Mary Louise Cannon, age 75, a widowed grandmother. After quietly entering Cannon's home, he found her asleep in the bedroom. He bludgeoned her into unconsciousness with a lamp and then repeatedly stabbed her using a 10-inch butcher knife from the kitchen. She was found dead at the scene. On July 5th, 1985, Ramirez broke into Sierra Madre and bludgeoned 16-year-old Whitney Bennett with a tire iron as she slept in her bedroom. After searching in vain for a knife in the kitchen, Ramirez attempted to strangle the girl with a telephone cord. He stated that he was startled to see electrical sparks emanate from the cord. When his victim began to breathe, he fled the house, believing that Jesus Christ has intervened and saved her. Bennett survived the savage beating, although 478 stitches were required to close the lacerations to her scalp. Oh my god. On July 7th, 1985, Ramirez burglarized the home of Joyce Lucille Nelson, age 61, in Monterey Park. Finding her asleep on her living room couch, he beat her to death using his fists, kicking her in the head. A shoe print from the VS sneaker was left imprinted on her face. After cruising two other neighborhoods, he returned to Monterey Park. I'm sorry, I've been saying that wrong and someone's probably getting really upset. It's Monterey Park. Monterey Park, here I am. He returned to Monterey Park and chose the home of Sophie Dickman, age 63. Ramirez assaulted the handcuffed Dickman at gunpoint, attempted to rape her, and stole her jewelry. When he swore to him that he had taken everything of value, he told her to swear on Satan, not to God. Okay. On July 20th, 1985, Ramirez purchased a machete before driving a stolen Toyota to Glendale, California. He chose the home of Layla Igniting, age 66, and her husband Maxine, age 68. He burst into the sleeping couple's bedroom and hacked them with a machete and then killed them with the shots to the head with a 22 caliber handgun. He further mutilated their bodies with a machete before robbing the house of valuables. After quickly fencing the stolen items from the needing residents, Ramirez drove to Sun Valley. At approximately 4:15 a.m., he broke into the home of the Kavanaugh family. He shot the sleeping Chainarong Kavanaugh in the head with a 25 caliber handgun, killing him instantly, and then reportedly raped and beat Samkid Kavanaugh. He bound the couple's terrified 8-year-old son before dragging Samkid down the house to reveal the location of any valuables which he stole. During his assault, he demanded that she swear to Satan and that she was not hiding any money from him. On August 6, 1985, Ramirez drove to Northridge and broke into the home of Chris and Virginia Peterson. He crept into the bedroom, startled Virginia, who was age 27 at the time, and shot her in the face multiple times with a 25 caliber semi-automatic handgun. He then shot Chris in the neck and attempted to flee. Chris fought back while avoiding being hit by 2 more shots in the struggle before Ramirez managed to escape. The couple survived their injuries that night. On August 8, 1985, Ramirez drove a stolen car to Diamond Bar, California, and chose the home of Sakina Abawath, age 27, and her husband Elias Abawath, age 31. Sometime before 2:30 a.m., he entered the home and went into the master bedroom. He instantly was killed, sleeping Elias with a shot to the head from a 25 caliber handgun. He then handcuffed and beat Sakina while forcing her to reveal that she swore to Satan that she would not scream during the assaults. When the couple's 3-year-old son entered the room, Ramirez tied the child up and then continued to rape Sakina. After Ramirez left the home, Sakina untied her son and sent him to the neighbors to get help. Ramirez, who had been following the media coverage of his crimes, left Los Angeles and headed to San Francisco. In 1985, on August 18th, he entered the home of Peter and Barbara Pan. He shot the sleeping Peter, age 66, in the temple with a .25 caliber handgun. He then beat and sexually assaulted Barbara, age 62, before shooting her in the head and leaving her for dead. At the crime scene, Ramirez used lipstick to scrawl a pentagram and the phrase "Jack the Knife" on the bedroom wall. When it was discovered that the ballistics and the shoe print evidence from the Los Angeles crime scenes matched the Pan crime scene, San Francisco's then Mayor Dianne Feinstein divulged the information in a televised conference. The leak infuriated the detectives on the case, as they knew that the killer would be following the media coverage, which gave him an opportunity to destroy the crucial forensic evidence. Ramirez, who was indeed watching the press, dropped the size 11.5 Avia sneakers over the Golden Gate Bridge that night. He remained in the area for a few more days before heading back to the Los Angeles area. On August 24, 1985, Ramirez traveled 76 miles south of Los Angeles in a stolen orange Toyota to Mission Viejo. That night he arrived to the home of James Romero Jr., who had just returned from a family vacation to the Rosario Beach in Mexico. Romero's 13-year-old son, James Romero III, happened to be awake and heard Ramirez's footsteps outside the house. Thinking there was a prowler, James went to wake his parents, and Ramirez fled the scene. James raced outside and noted the color, make, and model of the vehicle that he was driving, as well as the partial license plate. Romero contacted the police with this information, believing James had chased away the thief. After this encounter, Ramirez broke into the house of Carl Gaines through the back door at age 30 with his fiancée Inez Erickson, who was age 29. Ramirez entered the sleeping couple's bedroom and awakened Carnes with his cocked .25 caliber handgun. He shot Carnes 3 times in the head before turning his attention to Erickson. Ramirez told the terrified woman that he was the Night Stalker and forced her to swear that she loved Satan as he beat her with his fist and bound her from neckties to the closet. After stealing what he could find, Ramirez dragged Erickson to another room before raping her. He then demanded cash and jewelry and made her swear to Satan that there was no more. Before leaving the home, Ramirez told Erickson, "Tell them the Night Stalker was here." Erickson untied herself and went to the neighbor's house to get help for her severely injured fiancé. Surgeons removed 2 of the bullets from his head, and he survived the injuries, which means that there's still 1 in there, which is crazy that you'd have to live with a bullet in your head. Erickson gave a detailed description of the assailant to the investigators, and police obtained a cast of Ramirez's footprint from Romero's house. The stolen car was found abandoned on the 28th in Wilshire Center, Los Angeles, and the police obtained a single fingerprint from the rear view mirror. Despite Ramirez's careful efforts to wipe the car clean of his prints, the print was positively identified belonging to Ramirez, who was described as a 25-year-old drifter from Texas with a long rap sheet that included many arrests for traffic and illegal drug violations. Law enforcement officials decided to release a mugshot of Ramirez on December 12, 1984. The arrest for the auto theft to the media. So the picture was he had got arrested earlier for an auto theft. And so they took that mugshot, slapped the Night Stalker on it, sent it out to the media, and they finally had a face for this guy. At the police conference, it was announced, "We know who you are now, and soon everyone will. There will be no place where you can hide." He was also suspected on the night of the 27th, 1985, the 32-year-old Patty Higgins. She was murdered in her Acadia home. The crime was not discovered until July 2nd, when she didn't show up for work. Her attacker had sodomized her, strangled her, and slashed her throat. Ramirez was charged with murder and burglary in relation to Higgins' murder. However, the charges against him were dropped due to lack of concrete physical evidence linking him to the Higgins murder. So he got away with that one, but everyone knows that he did it. On August 30th, 1985, Ramirez took a bus to Tucson, Arizona to visit with his brother, unaware that he had become the lead story to virtually every major newspaper and television news program across California. After failing to meet his brother, he returned to Los Angeles early on the morning of August 31st. He walked past police officers who were staking out bus terminals in hopes of catching the killer should he attempt to flee and into a convenience store. So they were like trying to find him, and he walked right past them. So that's interesting. Okay. After noticing a group of elderly Mexican women fearfully identifying him as El Matador, meaning the killer, Ramirez saw the face on the front pages of the newspaper rack, recognizing himself, and fled the store in a panic. After running across the Santa Ana freeway, he attempted to carjack a woman but was chased away by bystanders who pursued him. After hopping over several fences and attempting 2 more carjackings, he was eventually subdued by a group of residents, one who had struck him over the head with a metal bar in pursuit. Good for him. You should have hit him like 15 and a half more times. The group held Ramirez down and relentlessly... Oh, they did good. They did. I should have read further. The group held Ramirez down and relentlessly beat him until the police came and took him into custody. Dude, they would have whooped his ass to death otherwise. Good for them. Good for them. And could you have been mad? Like, if they would have beat him, would you charge the group? Are you going to charge the fucking group? No. No, you're not. You're going to let that dude go off to the morgue. But, he ended up hanging around for a while, unfortunately. Jury selection for the trial began on January 22nd, 1988. At his first court appearance, Ramirez raised a hand with a pentagram drawn on it and yelled, "Hail Satan," in the courtroom. Great. Nice guy. On August 3rd, 1988, the Los Angeles Times reported that some jail employees overheard Ramirez planning to shoot the prosecutor with a gun, which Ramirez intended to have smuggled into the courtroom. Consequently, a metal detector was installed outside and intensive searches were conducted on the people who were entering the courthouse. On August 14th, the trial was interrupted because one of the jurors, Phyllis Singletary, did not arrive to the courtroom. Later that day, she was found shot to death in her apartment. The jury was terrified, wondering if Ramirez had somehow dictated this event from inside his prison cell, and whether or not he could reach other jurors. However, it was ultimately determined that Ramirez was not responsible for her death, as she was shot and killed by her boyfriend, who later committed suicide with the same weapon in a hotel. The alternate juror who replaced Singletary was too terrified to return to her home. On September 20th, 1989, Ramirez was convicted of all charges, 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. During the penalty phase of the trial on November 7th, 1989, he was sentenced to die in California's gas chamber. He stated to reporters that after the death sentence's big deal, death was always in the territory. See you in Disneyland. The trial cost the taxpayers $1.8 million at the time, which translates to just shy of $4 million in today's currency, which at the time made it the most expensive in California history until O.J. Simpson came along and made it super expensive in 1994 because that dude couldn't just put the car in park and get arrested like everyone else. By the time of the trial, Ramirez had fans who were writing him letters and paying him visits. By the beginning of 1985, Doreen Leoy wrote him nearly 75 letters during his incarceration. In 1988, Ramirez proposed to her, and on October 3rd, 1996, they were married in California's San Quentin State Penitentiary. Very nice. For many years, however, before Ramirez's death, Leoy stated that she wouldn't commit suicide when Ramirez was executed. However, Leoy eventually left Ramirez in 2009 after DNA confirmed that he had raped and murdered a 9-year-old. Which, if you remember at the beginning, that was Mi Leung. I'm sorry I'm saying that name wrong. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It's just hard to say. By the time of his death in 2013, Ramirez was engaged to Christine Lee, a 23-year-old writer. So this dude just still is getting women, and I'm over here single as fuck. So that's great. I just want a nice guy. And okay. This paper says something else, but okay. On August 7th, 2006, Ramirez's first round of state appeals ended unsuccessfully when California Supreme Court upheld his convictions and death sentence. On September 7th, 2006, when the California Supreme Court denied his request for a rehearing, Ramirez had appeals pending until the time of his death, which means he kept appealing it over and over and over again until he died from complications secondary to B-cell lymphoma, which is just cancer, at the Marin General Hospital in Green Bay, California, on June 7, 2013. He had also been affected by chronic substance abuse and chronic hepatitis C viral infections. At 53 years old, he had been on death row for more than 23 years, which is it's quite a while. I was going to say half, but then it's not true. By some estimates, he would have been in his early 70s before his execution would have been carried out due to California's lengthy appeals process. That's because they, in California, if you guys didn't know, it's like written in the law that death penalties are immediately appealed, like instantly appealed. That was the case of the Night Stalker. If you guys want some, it's gonna be. Don't watch it at night. It's crazy. It's literally crazy. They nailed it. Those Netflix guys, they absolutely nail documentaries. I don't know how they do it, but they do such a good job. Even that show, The Irishman, wasn't even a documentary. It was a movie, but they went in with old mob people that explain the stories perfectly. So it's like a live action historical. It's crazy. They do a great job. We're going to go on to our next story here. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to grab a sip of water and I will be right back. And I am back. Welcome back. To you, it seems like zero time at all has passed, but I am back, so that's great. Next case I want to talk about is that Delphi double homicide. So at 1:35 p.m. on Monday, February 13th, 2017, 13-year-old Abigail Abby Williams and 14-year-old Liberty Rose Lynn, also known as Libby German, were dropped off by Libby's older sister, Kelsey, at County Road 300 North, west of the Hoosier Heartland Highway. The girls were hiking on the Monon High Bridge over Deer Creek, among woodland and remote Deer Creek Township. At 2:07, Libby posted a photo of Abby walking across the bridge, and after this point, they were not heard from again. They were reported missing at 5:30 p.m. after they failed to meet Liberty's father at 3:15 p.m. The families initially searched for the girls themselves before calling the police. Authorities quickly searched the area, did not initially suspect foul play in the disappearance. However, this changed when the bodies of the girls were found around noon the next day, about 0.5 miles, which, for everyone who's not in Freedom Land, that is about a kilometer, 0.85 kilometers, east of the abandoned Monon High Bridge. The bodies were found on the north bank of Deer Creek. So, the initial sketch is not the same as the sketch that they are currently using. The initial sketch was very much like a truck guy, and I want to go ahead and pull up that image quick, and I'll put that on screen because here, actually, I'll tell you what, this is I don't even want to put the old image out there just because I don't want to get any foggy out, anything like that, but this is the current image. Put him up on the screen for a minute like that. There it is. This is the second image. The first image looked like an older man. This image shows someone much younger. And the police have said that it's likely someone between 18 and 30 years old, but could appear younger. So probably somebody with a baby face. Some audio here too as well, because give me 1 second. And it was great for at the time the sketch came out, it was great because it was everywhere and everyone was looking for that other person. And then 2 years later at the press conference was when they released this new image, and they also released an extended period of sound. So I'm going to go ahead and play this sound real quick of the actual killer of these two girls, which is crazy. This is the voice and the image. I mean, I'm looking at the person who killed them, and I'm hearing them, and it's just an unsolved case. So let me play this real quick. So he said down the hill, which means right after that bridge there was a hill right off to the side, and that led down to the creek, which is where the bodies were found. Police have not publicly stated nor released details of how the girls were murdered. As early as February 15, 2017, Indiana State Police began circulating a still image of an individual reportedly seen on the Monon High Bridge Trail near where the two friends were slain. The grainy photograph appears to have captured a Caucasian male, hands in pocket, walking across the rail bridge, head down towards the girls. A few days later, the person in the photograph was named the prime suspect in the double homicide. On February 22nd, law enforcement released an audio recording where the voice of the assailant, though through some muffled degree, meaning that it was she probably had the recording, in her pocket so that he wouldn't see that she was recording. You could hear him say, "down the hill." It was at this point in the news conference that officials credited the source and the audio and imagery to Libby's phone, and further extended her as a hero for having the uncanny foresight and fortitude to record the exchange in secret. The police indicated that additional evidence from the phone had been secured, but they did not release it as to compromise any future trial. By this time, the reward offered to the case was set at $41,000. On July 17th, offers distributed a composite sketch of someone who, at the time of the investigation, was sought as a person of interest in the murders. It had apparently been drawn by police from eyewitnesses to a certain hiker at the Delphi Historic Trails on the day that the girls vanished. On April 19th, 2019, Indiana State Police announced a new direction in the case. On behalf of State Police and the Multi-Agency Task Force, Superintendent Doug Carter released more materials a few days later in a press conference held on April 22nd. The new materials included a short video recording in which the grainy old video but in motion, in which the blue-jeaned and jacketed suspect is seen walking along the rail bridge for a little over a second. Superintendent Carter states that because of the deteriorating condition of the bridge, the suspect is not walking normally due to having spaces between the ties, which means that it's an old railroad bridge, so you could just walk normally. You had to make sure you weren't going to fall through the middle. Now, an updated sketch of the suspect was also unveiled, as well as an extended version of audio recording in which the slight raise in the suspect's voice can be detected as he utters the word "guys" before saying "down the hill." As I can play it again real quick, just as another reminder as to what it sounded like. Here it is. Down the hill. Down the hill. Down the hill. So, it's kind of creepy. That's his voice. This is kind of creepy to me. So, an updated sketch. Yes, sir. Said that. It was further explained that the previously released sketch showing an older man with a goatee and cap is now considered secondary by contrast to the clean-shaven individual of the newly revised composite. And the newly composite is the primary sketch of the prime suspect. That's a lot of P's and C's. That was crazy. Police say this person may range from age 18 to 40, but caution that his youthful appearance may make him look younger than his true age. On April 22nd, law enforcement reached out to the public urging all to look at the sketch, listen to the audio, and watch how the man walks on the bridge, and to send tips to this email, Abby and Libby tip at CACOSHRF.com. Investigators revealed that they have reason to believe that the suspect might well be hiding in plain sight, and that the person almost certainly is familiar with the area of Delphi, whether this individual might be living or working in the area or be there for another reason. An additional plea was made for help in identifying the driver of the vehicle that was left abandoned off of Hoosier Heartland Highway in Delphi at the former Child Services office between noon and 5 p.m. on the day of the murders. Now, they already have a few people of interest, and we'll go over them quickly. Obviously, they still do not have the person. They have not identified the person yet, but these are some people of interest. A man named Paul Eder. On July 23rd, 2019, Eder was wanted for the kidnapping and rape of a 26-year-old woman on June 22nd in Tippecanoe County. 5 days later, Eder was surrounded by police, and after a 5-hour standoff, he died by suicide. The next person of interest is Daniel J. Nations, who is a registered sex offender from Indiana and was arrested in Woodland Park, Colorado in September of 2017 and charged with threatening strangers in the Monument Trail with a hatchet. The expired Indiana plates on his car Nations was driving was noticed by police, who subsequently discovered an outstanding warrant under his name. Fanning public speculation still further, it was reported that a bicyclist has been fatally shot on the same trail around the same time that Nations was perpetually terrifying passerbyers. An El Paso County Sheriff's spokesperson told reporters that, however, many similarities there were between the cases. He was not at liberty to disclose them, since Indiana investigators did not want any more information released. On January 5th, 2018, Nations was sentenced to 3 years of probation for threatening members of the public in Colorado. However, he was not released since he had an active warrant out on him back in Indiana. On January 24th, Nations was transferred to Indiana officials' custody on an unrelated charge, failure to register as a sex offender. In early 2018, in February, authorities said that Nations was no longer considered an active person of interest in the Delphi homicides. Thomas Bruce, who worked as a pastor, is formally charged with fatally shooting one woman and sexually assaulting 2 others after ordering them at gunpoint into the back room of a suburban St. Louis shop for religious supplies. Committed in broad daylight on November 19, 2018, these crimes put Bruce in the spotlight of the press. Some noted that being similar statute to the current suspect in the Delphi slayings. Also, his wearing of a flat cap and navy blue jacket during the attack, not unlike the suspect in the Delphi case. Indiana State Police did look into this possible connection in November. On December 4th, Bruce was charged with no fewer than 17 felony counts related to a St. Louis case, and he could receive the death penalty. So there's no official word if he's related to Delphi or not. Charles Eldridge was arrested on January 8th, 2019 in Union City, Indiana on charges of child molestation and child solicitation. Police in Randolph County alerted the FBI to a potential link between Eldridge and the Delphi homicides on account of his strong resemblance to the suspect's sketch, albeit this was before the updated composite had come out. In response to requests from German's mother, countless homeowners across central Indiana had orange lights installed on their front porches, both to commemorate the girls as well to indicate that there is a murderer that lives among them. On August 2017, the families announced their plans to build a sports complex for Delphi in the memory of the girls. A nonprofit organization, L&A Park Foundation, was formed to celebrate and commemorate the lives of Libby German and Abby Williams by creating a place for the appreciation of nature, art, play, and athleticism for generations to come. A site was procured a mile north of Delphi, and in the years following the girl's death continued progress. Blah, 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 blah. And in the years following the girls' deaths, continued progress has been made in the development of Abby and Libby's Memorial Park. If you would like to listen to the interview that I had with Kelsey German, which is the older sister of Libby German, that is over on the Cloud Surfing podcast, which is still on the Cloud Surfing Network. Very, very humbling to talk to her, and it was eye-opening to understand a first person's point of view who's so close to something so tragic such as this. It's crazy because this case, like I said, is very solvable. Somebody knows something. If you know something, say something. These are 2 children that were murdered. It's unacceptable. We've gone almost 4 years now without any justice for them. It's very unacceptable. We can't allow this to go on. And the more media coverage that we have, the more press that goes around. I think HLN is doing a show about it. Thank God. So hopefully that there's a press conference by the Indiana State Police. I'm not sure. I did reach out to them for comment, and they did not want to comment on the matter at all. Which is nothing personal, as you can see by the story. They're just keeping their facts close to chest. They aren't looking to give away any information, because that is information that then could not be used in trial later on when they do actually catch the guy. And it's very important to understand that, 1, this guy's going to get caught one day, and 2, the information in trial is going to be very important, because that guarantees that this guy's going to be put away. So once again, if you have any ideas or suggestions, go ahead and reach out to me on jakewritercomedy.com or jakewritercomedy@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to discuss them. Thanks for listening. This has been American Homicide with Jake Ryder.